It's like when I was little, my parents were abusive to me, and my little sister almost died because my mom threw her in the crib. And
I'd rather be with my mother right now, but I can't because she died.
Honestly, it's not the best because what they do there, it's terrible because it's probably good because you're learning from your mistakes, but at the same time, it's like you're basically locking them up as a kid, and that's pretty traumatic.
They're out of their home, they're out of their community. Even though they may have been creating problems in school, it was their school, the teachers knew them, and so forth. It takes a long time to get to know these kids. If you understand children's mental health, one day a kid could look totally psychotic, and a day later, they don't, I would see this. They would bring a child in to see me, and the kid was fine. So there were 9 cents out of every dollar went to kids, and the problem was that kids made up 19% of the population. So the disparity was huge, and the services were very traditional and very limited. The other thing was that what we were learning was that we were serving the same kids. The difference was that if they had an emotional issue, looked depressed, they ended up in the mental health system. But if they had acted out in school or were delinquent or something, they ended up in the family court or behavioral system. And neither one had the resources.
So the kids, most generally, would go out, get themselves in trouble, and land in front of family court, and the court didn't have any place to put them other than an institution. And that's what it was. It was just a revolving door.
Out-of-home placement based on the 1999 Surgeon General's report was ineffective, was very costly, and had no generalization once the child left the institution. And we also found that another part, while the Return Home Early project is that kids were kept in institutional care even though they were functionally ready to go home because it didn't meet the money model, which was basically let's keep them till the end of the school year, even though they were ready to go home in January, because where are we going to get backfill to the placements, to the beds?
A facility is sort of a kind of a fake environment for a child, and when they come home they tend to maybe have more problems because they're used to such strict rules or rigidity. So it's not really setting up kind of like a real life situation for a child.
We were getting pressure because of the number of kids that we had in residential treatment through the Department of Social Services. We were being pressured by the Office of Mental Health because we had a lot of kids going in and out of Pinefield at the time. Nobody was happy with the way we were managing children. And family court was equally unhappy with us. So nobody was happy with the way the county was responding to the needs of children and families. Once they got there, they were there for 18 months. Some of the kids, when they would come home, were disconnected from their family, were disconnected from the community, certainly disconnected from the schools, and we would throw them back into that environment, and within a relatively short period of time, they were back before family court to repeat the process. We didn't have very good outcomes, for anybody, and it was just costing millions and millions of dollars.
The model has failed. There's absolutely no continuity of care. And that's absolutely critical with kids. I mean, and then how do you get, what are you gonna do? Once they get into the intensive system, they're stuck there. So you're gonna stack them up like a warehouse. They didn't like that either. It didn't work. It didn't generalize. So you could teach kids, things that they had to do in an institutional setting. But when they got back home and the family hadn't changed, and the community was still the community, they hadn't learned the skills that they were necessary. And that the best model really was to surround the child and the family with services specific to them. And that's where Phil Endress, Commissioner of Mental Health for Oneida County, and Ted Moore, who was the Commissioner of Social Services for Oneida County, began to have conversations.
We were having meetings at the neighborhood center. Dick DeRose was then the DSS commissioner, and trying to figure out how better to serve kids in the county. And we literally stumbled upon an article about a model that they had in Ventura, California.
Well, 99% of the time, it's better to keep a child in their neighborhood, in their school, with their family. Sometimes there might be a safety issue where getting away from the family might be necessary, or maybe a medication tune-up for a brief period of time. But our idea is a wraparound philosophy is get the child in the home, with the family, with the friends, and wrap services around them instead of putting them somewhere where all the services are already in place.
It's a philosophy of care in which the patient, the child, is the focus. So if you look at it as the hub of a wheel, in the old days, the hub didn't have any spokes. It just had a wheel, and it was containment. And the fact of the matter is that the wraparound model is a strength-based model. It builds on the strengths of the family. It doesn't just look at the negative part. It recognizes that in the long run, it's going to be the strengths of the child and the family that you build on that will ultimately make it a successful intervention.
You're not looking at what's wrong with the child, you're looking at the strengths. So what are the strengths in this family and this child that we can build on? And if you highlight that, oftentimes they find a way to help themselves. It's not us doing the work, it's them and their family doing the work. And we're just providing some insight and maybe help along the way.
Bingo! You know, let's figure out how to make that work here.
The funding was critical from the day one. And the reason it was critical was it was a combination of mental health dollars and social services dollars. And without that money being invested, there was no investment in the program by other services. They could just walk away. But when they had to put money into it, then they had to sort of monitor it, and then they realized there was a benefit to the program.
We went to Seattle and had the final meeting for all of the fundees, and we came back, and you know the summary was that New York State will never go anywhere with this because it's just too many regulations, too many bureaucracies, and it's just not going to happen. And we reported back to then County Executive Yanis. He had a meeting with Governor Pataki at the time. We had told him that, you know, we should be able to figure out how to do this in New York.
If you can imagine a large conference room. Now, have you ever been in the 7th floor conference room in the county building? Well, this one was bigger than that one. And they always put these tables in a square, and there was always about 30 people from the state there, and Phil and I. And it was State Division of Budget, Medicaid, Children's Services, Governor's Office, you name it. Everybody was there. And they were all trying to figure out how or if they should get involved in this. They didn't want to, especially Medicaid. Medicaid had to come up with a portion of the monthly payment. And they didn't want to do that.
Ted Moore and Phil Endress came to me, and they described this project to me. And what they said was, you know, from the social services and the mental health side, was that, you know, there were a number of services available to help young people in trouble, but they had trouble putting them together, and especially had trouble putting them together in a way that would also help the families so that it would be something that could heal. And this was an idea at the time that was relatively unheard of because every program from the state had its silo. It had its own, it had lots of good things that, this program or that program was doing, but they had their program, somebody else had theirs. Well, fortunately, first off, I had total respect for these two gentlemen, and I really listened to what they wanted to do. Second, I had been in the assembly with Governor Pataki, and we had kept our friendship and respect for each other professionally. So I was able to go to the governor's office as well and say, look, we want to blend services from different agencies, and we need someone to help us break down the bureaucratic barriers to this.
The next morning, we had a conference call at 8 o'clock in the morning from Ralph's office with the governor, his chief of staff, the OMH commissioner, OCFS commissioner, and health commissioner. And he said, I want you to come back to his staff in 30 days and tell me how you've accomplished this.
30 days.
30 days. And we'd been going for months, more than months, years at that point.
When I got to the county executive job, our youth bureau, for example, which was run by some wonderful people, was mostly focused on helping when kids were already in trouble. And I wanted to see us help kids before they got into trouble. And Kids Oneida was in the middle of that because it was helping when young people were just starting to have problems and helping them with the best resource that many of them had, which was their family. So if we could put them together and help the whole family unit to survive whatever the current problem was and grow, then we had a key for the future. It wouldn't just be that we were helping somebody with today's problem. We were helping a young person to be able to grow into a good adulthood.
We could show the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we were saving the county. They became very interested. And that, by the way, I think was the selling point even when we moved into Kids Herkimer. And I think it's probably the selling point to this day. That why spend $300 or $400 a day on an out-of-home placement when you can spend probably less than half of that on Kids Oneida or Kids Herkimer, et cetera.
2 months after that, KO was in operation.
I feel great, and especially with Kids Oneida still, they've helped me so much regain the trust of my whole family.
I just respect my parents. I feel really grateful that they did that for me and for my other siblings.
Before, I threatened my brother with knives, and now my brother we're so close now.
I would have to say that it was sort of a dream come true to be part of the development and implementation of that program, because it was the right thing to do at the right time. And I would say that probably every county in New York State wishes it had a Kids Oneida.
A monthly census of kids in institutions had to have been about 250 kids. Yeah. After a couple of years of being in Kids Oneida, that got cut in half. And I always said that if I did in today's world what I did when I was between the ages of 9 and 12, seriously, they would have put me in an institution. Because there was no place else to go.
This became pretty quickly a model program for the state. And I couldn't believe within a year, I think it was, that I heard Phil and Ted all excited telling us how already people were coming from other parts of the state to see Kids Oneida and to see how it worked.
Because of our success, it is kind of the way mental health is going nowadays. They're trying to keep people in the homes, get services going. That's what Medicaid is looking at nowadays. Ultimately, it saves the county and the government money, and the results are positive, so why not do it? If it's positive for the participant and positive financially, it makes sense.
I don't think there's anyone exactly like us now. I think there's people that do pieces of what we might do, but as a whole organization, this was really kind of breakthrough when it started 20 years ago. So I still think there's really no one that is exactly like us.
Statewide, the state is beginning to see that just through research and through applying that wraparound approach and that individualized care and treatment, that's really needs to be the model of how we treat kids and families moving forward. And that is the whole focus of what's happening with our system today. It's really defined the way New York State views treatment of children and families with chronic conditions and mental health challenges. Behaviors are a symptom of a deeper issue. And a lot of times you see a lot of these kids and families have gone through a tremendous amount of trauma, or sometimes the parents that we deal with themselves have had their own mental health problems or their own family, dysfunction that, it just makes life so much more challenging. And when you have a program like Kids Oneida, that you have actually not just one person, a team of people that can help to continue to work with you and not give up, that makes a big difference.
I helped a lot of families here locally and all throughout Oneida County. I remember spending a lot of time, driving out to Taberg, driving to Rome, meeting a lot of different people in schools. I met my wife actually, in a school in Rome when I was working Kids Oneida. My wife was actually working for another program. I believe it was Families Foremost at the time, and we were both doing similar services, and passed away in the hallway one time.
You have an array of services, and you have money in a pile, and you pick service A, service based on a good diagnostic. The diagnostic of the child and the family says they need service A, D, F, and G. And you look at your provider network, and you pull A, D, F. Oh, we don't have a G. So now what we do with our discretionary money is we create a G service. And now they have the full array of services that they need. Before, they had service A, maybe service B, and that was it. There was no way you could create a service that basically wrapped around the family.
Healing these children and families is a journey. It's not an event. And many of our kids, one of the philosophies of this program is, even if they do end up really having to spend some time in a rehabilitation center or having to spend some time, incarcerated, that's not what you would wish or you would want for any of our kids and families. But it may be part of their journey, and it may be part of the journey. It doesn't have to be the end of the journey. It might just be part of the journey. And if you see them through the beginning, the middle, and the end, I think success begins to paint a whole different picture.
They deserve to be out in the community and, having that chance and opportunity to do all of those things. Maybe being in a regular school or doing some of the sports, organized sports that are out in the community that they probably won't have an opportunity to do if they run a facility. So it certainly gives them a lot more opportunities. I think that would definitely not be there if it wasn't for Kids Oneida.
What was great about the program was that I got rid of my psychiatric model covering and became very attuned and very accepting that families knew their children best, and you had to get them in as partners and make them not just, on the side partners, but full partners in managing, because we weren't going to be there forever, and they were going to, take care of their kids, and they had to have the tools and skills to do that.
We've been doing things the right way every step of the way. We are always visionaries. We are always trying new things. We are always researching the best way to do things. So I think that we have the right foundation to be providing the best services, continuing to grow, and continuing to provide the best possible service for adults and children in this community. And we'll just continue to expand as years go on.
Without a doubt, it has touched a lot of lives here in Oneida County. And especially here in this Utica area. I'm from Utica, myself, so I know a lot of people personally that it's helped out, whether it's through working with their children, working with their grandchildren, working with their neighbor, working with one of their students in school. I met a lot of good people through this program.
We really do what we do well, and we only can do it because our staff and our network of people that work here and our supporters are number one, by far.
This program helped to blend services from a number of different sources, mostly state. When we could throw in local help, we were glad to do it. But the local help that we really got was cooperation and collaboration. And that really made a difference. And it helped us to help children. It helped us to help their families. It helped us to keep everybody at home and in the community. And that's what has paid off.